Debunking the Arius Piso theory, the truth behind early Christianity. Photo by Eastman Childs on Unsplash. The Arius Piso theory, which posits that the New Testament was written by members of the Piso family, particularly Lucius Calpurnius Piso, a Roman aristocrat, has stirred much debate. However, upon closer examination of early Christian writings, scriptural context, and historical facts, we find substantial evidence to debunk this theory. In this article, we will look at how the alleged Piso authorship fails to hold up, especially when examined in light of the principles we've discussed in previous articles. Romans 9:4-5 reinforces this perspective by stating, "Who are Israelites to whom pertaineth the adoption, and the glory, and the covenants, and the giving of the law, and the service of God, and the promises." This passage emphasizes that the adoption, glory, covenants, law, service to God, and promises are all directed specifically toward Israel, challenging the traditional interpretations that extend these to Gentiles. Early Christian writings and the Piso theory. The Piso theory is predicated on the idea that the Flavian dynasty, including emperors like Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian, wrote the New Testament to pacify the Jewish uprising and control early Christianity. Proponents of this theory argue that the Piso family members, including Lucius Calpurnius Piso, took credit for writing the Gospels, ensuring their dominance over the growing religious movement. However, early Christian writings such as the letters of Ignatius, the Apostolic Fathers, and other church writings from the 1st and 2nd centuries make it clear that the New Testament was already being circulated widely among the early communities, long before any possible involvement from the Piso family. These writings do not point to the Flavian emperors or the Piso family as authors of the Scriptures. Instead, they emphasize the apostles such as Paul and Peter, and the ongoing transmission of the teachings of Christ. These texts were regarded as authentic and divinely inspired by the early church, a fact that would be incredibly hard to fabricate or alter, especially when these texts were being circulated and debated by a variety of groups in different regions. Additionally, the early church fathers who were writing in the 2nd century consistently affirmed that the Scriptures were passed down from the apostles, and their works focus on defending against heresies, not promoting the interests of any Roman family. This is a major red flag for those who subscribe to the Piso theory, as the narrative of the Piso family's involvement directly contradicts the clear, widely accepted historical evidence of the early Christian movement. 2. The symbolism of drinking Jesus' blood and its biblical context. Another key element often cited by proponents of the Piso theory is the ritual of drinking Jesus' blood. However, this practice, far from being a new or invented tradition to obscure the true nature of early Christianity, has roots deeply embedded in the Passover rituals and the Mosaic Law, which Jesus himself was a part of. The act of drinking wine during the Passover meal was not introduced by Jesus, but rather already part of the Israelite tradition to commemorate the Exodus from Egypt. When Jesus refers to drinking his blood, it is symbolic of his sacrifice and the establishment of a new covenant, an idea that's thoroughly rooted in the Hebrew Bible and Israelite customs. The notion of drinking blood was never intended as a literal act, but rather as a powerful symbol of atonement, covenant, and unity with God. This interpretation aligns with the broader scriptural narrative and does not contradict the idea of upholding God's commandments. His teachings, including the breaking of bread and drinking wine, were not about negating the law but about fulfilling it, emphasizing a deeper spiritual connection and foreshadowing his sacrificial death. 3. 1 Timothy 2-4, a clear message. One verse often used to suggest a universalist Christian salvation narrative is 1 Timothy 2:4, which states, "Who will have all men to be saved, and to come unto the knowledge of the truth." At face value, this verse seems to imply that God's salvation is for everyone. However, when contextualized with the broader biblical narrative, it is clear that this verse does not contradict the understanding that the covenant and promises of salvation were given specifically to Israel. The Bible consistently refers to Israel as God's chosen people, and salvation through Christ was first and foremost for the lost sheep of Israel, as Jesus himself stated in Matthew 15:24. The call for salvation extends to the Israelites scattered among the nations who are metaphorically represented as Gentiles in the New Testament, but not to every single person indiscriminately. 1 Timothy 2:4 is better understood as referring to the inclusion of all who were part of Israel, those who had strayed and were being called back, rather than a broad, all-encompassing call to every nation. Conclusion: debunking the Piso theory. In summary, the Arius Piso theory fails to account for the overwhelming evidence found in early Christian writings, the consistent biblical themes, and the historical record. The idea that the New Testament was written by the Piso family to serve their political agenda is simply not supported by the evidence. especially when we look at the authentic early Christian writings that were circulated long before the Flavian dynasty rose to prominence. Moreover, the rituals surrounding the drinking of wine and the understanding of salvation in Scripture align perfectly with the continuity of Israelite tradition and the fulfillment of God's covenant with Israel. The call to salvation in passages like 1 Timothy 2:4 is not a contradiction to the exclusive promises made to Israel, but rather an extension to the scattered tribes of Israel, who were to be regathered and restored to their rightful place. By examining these texts in their historical context, we can see that the Piso theory does not hold up under scrutiny. Instead, we see a consistent and coherent biblical narrative that points to Israel's central role in God's plan of salvation, as outlined in both the Old and New Testaments. Written by Christopher Turner, expert theologist specializing in Israelite heritage and covenant theology, biblical scholar and cultural historian focusing on ancient scriptures and the lost tribes of Israel, author of Rediscovering Israel, a comprehensive study of covenantal promises and the scattered tribes, contributor to theological journals Insights on Hebrew Texts, Prophecy and New Testament Context, public speaker discussing Israelite identity, prophecy and scriptural truth in the modern age, covenant theology researcher unveiling the promises made to Israel and their fulfillment,